All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine, and I work with SEB Housing. And this is the information session for the 3 affordable single-family homes at Cranberry Cove in Redbrook in Plymouth. So the purpose of this session is to share a little bit of background information on the homes. I'm also going to cover the application, the eligibility, and the lottery processes, and what to expect after the lottery. So if you have any questions during this session, you're encouraged to go ahead and type them into the chat function in Zoom, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself to ask a question. During the session, I'll be asking if you have any questions at certain times, but when you came into the session, you were muted to just minimize any outside noise during this call. So this is a live session. It's going to be recorded and saved to SEB Housing's YouTube channel. So it'll be there available for viewing after tonight. So first, just want to give you some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we are an off-site affordable housing consulting group. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable homes, conduct this information session. We'll be the ones to collect and review the lottery applications from applicants, and also we'll be running the lottery eventually. So we're not part of the sales team for the units. We haven't seen them in person, but we're rather kind of a third party in this process. So during the initial phases, SEB Housing will be your main point of contact rather than the development or the sales team, but then further along in the process, you'll have more direct contact with the owner as you're invited to move forward to purchasing one of the homes. So kind of 2 broad steps in the process. You'll be in touch with SEB Housing during the first step in the process. We can answer any questions you have on the affordable housing program, and we'll do a preliminary review of your application. If you're eligible, based on what you self-reported in your application, you'll be entered into the lottery and be given a position on the waiting list following the lottery drawing. The second step in the process involves all the processes leading up to actually reserving or buying one of the homes, and your opportunity to do that will depend on your waiting list placement after the lottery. So if you're one of the top households on the waiting list, since there's only 3 homes, you'll have the greatest chance of being able to purchase one of them. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and go to our website, sebhousing.com. If you click on affordable housing opportunities and select I want to buy, since this is a homeownership opportunity, you're going to see a selection for Cranberry Cove. And so you'll be taken to a page specific to the property, to Cranberry Cove, with a downloadable version of the application. It's a PDF that you'll see. And there's also a template sample deed rider, which will be finalized closer to closing. I'll talk about that document in a few minutes, and the information packet as well. A lot of the information I'm going to be talking about tonight is material that's in the information packet. So I won't have time to cover everything that's in that. So even if you're attending this session, we always encourage applicants to go ahead and take a look at that information packet. So if you choose to apply for one of the affordable homes at Cranberry Cove, you'll need to complete that affordable housing application. And it will need to also be submitted to us with a mortgage pre-approval. That is the only supporting document that is required at this stage in the process. You don't need to submit income verification or anything like that with your lottery application, just that mortgage pre-approval. So there's a few ways that you can get that application and the mortgage pre-approval over to us. You can email it to us as an attachment. You can fax it to us. Our fax number is on the first page of the application. You can send it by regular mail to us at our office in Needham. Or if you are in the Needham area, we have a secure Dropbox at the office, and all that information is on the first page as well of the application. So whichever one of those options works best for you. And we encourage you to get your lottery application in early. So it is fairly brief, shouldn't take you all that long to complete. And again, there's no supporting documentation needed at this early stage in the process, but you do need to have that mortgage pre-approval from a bank submitted with your application. And I'll talk a little bit more about that soon as well. The application deadline, just to go back to the first slide here, is March 24th. So your application would need to be delivered or postmarked by that date in order to be considered for the lottery. And then I always just like to quickly mention there's no requirement, no need to be a resident of Plymouth to be able to apply for this lottery. All right, so these 3 homes, they are being made available at a price that is a lot lower than the market rate homes that are selling within the Redbrook communities. And the affordable sales price for the 4-bedroom homes is $349,500. There is a $249 per month, $245 per month HOA fee for these homes. And from what I can see, the market rate homes that are selling in Redbrook are going for between $700,000 and $800,000, and somewhere in that price point. And these 3 affordable homes are going to be sold only to households who qualify for the affordable housing program. So that's why we're having the lottery. And one of the qualifications is that households need to have a total household income that doesn't exceed 80% of the area median income for Plymouth, which is in the Boston area. So I'll talk more about what those numbers actually mean in terms of the maximum incomes for the affordable housing program. And then you'll also see those figures on the information packet, on the application. You'll notice that is, those are listed everywhere, and they're going to be on the next slide that I use as well. So Cranberry Cove. So this is a community that is part of a much larger development in sort of the South Plymouth area. So that larger community is called Redbrook. So that's why Cranberry Cove at Redbrook is the name of this community within the community. And like I said, this is a lottery for 3 affordable 4-bedroom single-family homes. So 2 stories, there's an open kitchen. The primary suite is located on the 1st floor. The other 3 bedrooms are located on the 2nd floor. There's a full unfinished basement. There is central AC and heat, and there's professional landscaping with irrigation at the property. There's also laundry and mudrooms located off the 2-car garage, and there's driveway parking available as well. And within that larger Redbrook community, there are some amenities, including a pickleball and bocce court. And there's a pond with a dock, walking trails, and then you'll obviously be in close proximity to all of the other amenities that are on property, such as restaurants and things like that at Redbrook. So the affordable sales price that you see is set in accordance with the area median incomes that are published each spring by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, so HUD. And that's kind of how we have a calculation. That's how these prices came about. And since these are affordable homes, they're going to have what's called a deed rider, and I mentioned that a couple minutes ago too, a deed rider filed along with the deed at the time of purchase. So what that means is it's different from purchasing a market rate home in some ways, because the deed rider is putting certain restrictions on the resale when that time comes, if you were to sell the home down the line. And the deed rider basically ensures that the home remains affordable in the future, even if the first owner eventually chooses to sell it. So just a quick overview of kind of 3 main points that the deed rider covers. So the deed rider limits the amount for which you can eventually sell the property. So the opportunity probably isn't for you if you're looking to only live in the unit because you want to buy and resell or flip it. It doesn't mean you wouldn't be able to sell the property for more than what you paid for it, but you're not going to see the same return on investment that a market rate home might see within just a couple of years. There is a formula for the resale price for affordable properties, and that is towards the end of the information packet, and that's also based on area median income. The second thing that the deed rider stipulates is that this home must be your primary residence. So generally you can't rent it out as an investment property like an Airbnb or a Vrbo or something like that. And then finally, if you'd like to refinance or make capital improvements on the property in the future, such as a new roof or addition or something like that, you would need to go through the state agency that oversees this affordable housing program, which is the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And just want to mention that because they would need to be involved and need to technically approve any change like that. These are brand new homes though, so it's not likely that you'd be looking to make any drastic improvements right away. So I mentioned that the mortgage pre-approval is required to be submitted along with your lottery application. So what we suggest for applicants is that you review the information packet and you just look at page 8, which has the mortgage requirements, and just either rip that page out or take that page to your mortgage lender. So bring it to the bank with you when you're looking to get a mortgage pre-approval. And we suggest that because we want to make sure that the mortgage product you're being offered is going to meet the standards that are necessary for this affordable housing program. So also we suggest bringing the deed writer with you, since sometimes there are issues with the sample deed writer that can be problematic for some lenders, some banks. And again, that sample deed writer is listed on our website listing. It's one of the attachments that you'll see on the Cranberry Cove listing on our website. So like I said, certain loans won't accept all the terms of the deed writer. So an example of that, the loan for this affordable housing opportunity needs to have a fixed interest rate throughout the term of the mortgage. It also can't be an FHA or a VA loan, since those types of loans don't accept the deed restrictions for this program. So you don't want to be in a situation where the lender, the bank, grants you a mortgage pre-approval, but then when the time comes to get your mortgage commitment further along in this process, they back out because they weren't made aware of these resale restrictions that are associated with affordable housing properties. So along those lines, we also like to mention too, we have noticed that it's been very difficult for applicants to successfully close with a Bank of America mortgage. So we recommend that you don't use Bank of America for your pre-approval or mortgage commitment, because it seems like their mortgage products are not suited for affordable homes. But in general, you are able to select any lender or bank that you would like. We just strongly recommend that you choose someone that has experience with affordable housing programs. In the information packet on page 8, there is a hyperlink for you to go to the Mass Housing Partnerships website. They're a nonprofit that has some great resources online, including a very long list of lenders who are familiar with affordable housing. So you'd be able to find someone at pretty much every bank there that might be able to help you out. One other note on the mortgage pre-approval. So the mortgage pre-approval states that you must provide a down payment of at least 3% of the purchase price. Half of that 3%, so 1.5%, has to come from your own funds. So it can't be gifted to you, for example. And so your mortgage can be for up to 97% of the purchase price. So that was kind of a basic overview of the deed writer, the general application process to kind of get us started. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to the eligibility criteria for the affordable housing program? Who's eligible and all of that?
Hello.
Yep, I can hear you.
This is Maria.
Hi.
Hello. So I have a question regarding what you just said. I got a pre-approval through Mass Housing, through an agent that I found through my Mass Housing.
Yep.
But I got the pre-approval including a $30,000 from a program that Mass Housing has for the down payment.
Okay.
And as I understood, $17,000 are for down payment, and the rest is for the other costs that we're going to have during the purchase of the house. So if you said that the 3%, like the 1.5, has to come from us, we are forced to have that amount, even if Mass Housing already gave us the assistance.
Yes, I believe they would have to, I'm not going to speak on that definitively, but I believe they would only be able to give you 1.5% of the down payment as kind of like the cap on their assistance for you. I'm going to check on that though, because I honestly don't know for sure. And I want to make sure that I reach out to my colleagues who would know for sure. So if you want to did you already submit an application?
No,
Okay.
we have like almost everything ready, but we wanted to
Yeah.
like ask these questions.
Yeah. So send me a message in the chat just to me, not to everyone, with your email address and your name, and I'll make sure to get back to you by tomorrow morning on that.
Okay, thank you so much. It's because we have everything from mass housing already, and
Yep.
we just want to make sure that we can apply.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's
Okay.
a great question. I know that there's programs out there that have assistance with down payments, and we don't want anyone to be excluded, from using those. But if this particular program has a stipulation on that, we want to make sure you know about that ahead of time. So, yep.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Yep. And I'll learn something too when I find out the answer. Anyone else before I move on to eligibility for the actual affordable housing program? All right. So this information is in the information packet too, like pretty much everything that I'll be covering, but it's an important piece. So there's 4 eligibility requirements listed in the information packet. The first is that everyone in the household must qualify as a first-time home buyer. And how the program defines that is, I'll talk about that in just a minute. But there are some exceptions to the first-time home buyer rule, and even households who qualify for an exception would need to sell their current home prior to buying or to closing on an affordable home at Cranberry Cove. So if you own a home now, you will need to be off the deed to be able to close on this affordable home. Secondly, a household's income and assets have to be below the maximum allowable income and assets for the program. So on your screen, you can see, and this is again in the information packet, but we have the maximum household income listed for households going up to 8 people. And you can see there that the asset limit is also $75,000. So your total household assets can't be more than $75,000 because you will be over the asset limit for this program. And in terms of income, so if you're a 2-person household, for example, you can see that your total household income needs to be below $104,200 to qualify. And then it goes down the line because this is the total household, the maximum household income limits are by household size. And I'll talk a lot more about that in just a minute too. And then, of course, households need to be pre-approved for a mortgage, which we've talked about. And then finally, households can't have financial interest in the development or be a related party. So what that means is if you are working for or you're related to the developer of this property, you might not be eligible for the lottery. So just to circle back on the first-time home buyer eligibility criteria. So household members are considered first-time home buyers if they haven't within the last 3 years owned a home. So that includes through joint ownership. So if you're a household member, anybody in your household was on the deed of a home along with a partner or a spouse, you were considered to be an owner of that home within the last 3 years. There's 5 exceptions to that first-time home buyer rule, and the 3 of them that we see the most often I'm going to go through just real quickly right now. So the first is someone that's referred to as a displaced homemaker. So this is someone who has not worked outside of the home for quite a while, but was working within the home to care for the home and family. And they owned a home because they were on the deed with their spouse or partner, but they no longer own that home. They've been off the deed because of a recent divorce or legal separation. So if that person, or if there's someone in your household who qualifies for that exception, as long as their name is off the deed by the time that they're closing on a home at Cranberry Cove, they could potentially qualify for that exception. The second exception is a single parent with at least joint custody of 1 or more children who is now displaced and looking for a new home. And then the third exception is if you have someone that's 55 or over in your household who is selling or has sold a home within the last 3 years in order to purchase an affordable property, they may qualify for the first-time home buyer exception. So basically, if you own a home right now, even if any of those apply to you, you need to be off the deed before you close on a home at Cranberry Cove. But you could potentially have owned a home in the last 3 years if you qualify for one of those exceptions. Maria, thank you for your info. I just got that. Or for your message, I mean. So just give me one second to, so just give me 1 second here to make sure I have your info saved. And I'll move on to the income information here. So as you can see, the income limits are on your screen. You're not required to submit any verification of income when you submit your application or your mortgage pre-approval. But if you are approved for this lottery based off of what you self-reported in your application, you're going to be emailed a documentation requirements guide, and that's going to give you an idea of specifically or exactly what you're going to need to submit later on in the process. So how many pay stubs, you'll need to submit tax returns for the last 3 years, and it'll kind of give you a general idea as to what you should start setting aside if you're approved for the lottery. So we just request that you take a look at that if you are approved for the lottery and have that link to the guide that we send you. And just to give you an overview too, even though you're not required to submit any income verification at this point, just for a quick overview on how your income will be counted for this affordable housing program. So we are required to count gross income. Even though most of us are not taking home your gross income or the amount that's listed on your pay stubs, most people are paying, Social Security, medical benefits, that sort of thing, taxes, obviously. And unfortunately, we do need to count the gross income according to the regulations for this program. And the income is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. So what that means is if you're making, if your tax returns are showing us that over the last 12 months you were working 2 jobs, we're going to be requesting pay stubs from 2 jobs. If you're no longer working the second job, for example, we'll need something from the previous employer definitively letting us know when you stopped working there, and so forth. So the only exceptions to the income that we do need to count is if you have a minor in your household, so someone under the age of 18 who's working and earning a wage, we're not going to count their wage income. Also, a dependent full-time student, so maybe a college student who is working, we will only count the first $480 of their annual wages towards your total household income. And then if you're working, we always like to mention this too, if you're working seasonally or if you're self-employed, we may need to ask for more information from you just to confirm just to try to project what your income is going to be over the next 12 months. So if you're self-employed, for example, we'll need a profit and loss statement. If you're working seasonally, we may need more pay stubs from you to be able to get a sense of how much you make in a year. When you're filling out your lottery application, just make sure that you're listing all of your income. So not just wages, but Social Security, if anyone in your household is receiving a pension, workman's compensation, unemployment benefits, that sort of thing. There is no minimum household income requirement for the program, but in order to qualify for a mortgage, you're going to need to meet the lender or the bank's requirements for that mortgage pre-approval. So just keep that in mind. They're going to be most banks are going to have different standards. It's not going to be uniform across the board, but just make sure that you're prepared for that. And as I mentioned, that $75,000 asset limit at the time of application, so that includes any funds that you might be hoping to use for a future down payment. So if you have a family member, for example, who's planning to gift you some of your down payment, that money is going to be considered an asset, so you need to just disclose that on your lottery application. And then when you're filling out your application and listing your assets, that includes, not just cash that's in savings and checking accounts, but the net value of any retirement accounts like 401ks, stocks, Venmo, PayPal, all that sort of thing. And you might think it's a little strange that we're going to be counting funds that you have tied up in retirement accounts, because many of you might not be planning to access that money for many years, but the program does require us to do so, since you could, in theory, withdraw those funds, even with that large penalty that you might get. So it's the post-penalty amount, or the net cash value, that we need to count if you have a retirement account. So say you had $90,000 in a retirement account, you would be asked to get a letter from the financial institution that holds that fund for you, and they would be able to estimate the post-penalty amount if you were to withdraw those funds today. We don't need information or documentation regarding personal assets, so like cars or anything like that, are not counted towards that $75,000. All right, so lottery eligibility. As I mentioned earlier, if you have interest in this opportunity, we always just like to encourage everybody to get the process started as soon as possible to get your application in. SCB Housing will review your application and contact you if any information appears to be missing or incorrect. If you don't submit your pre-approval, for example, your mortgage pre-approval, you'll have a chance to submit that to us after you get an incomplete notice from SCB Housing. So we like to work with people, and we're not going to send you a denial notice. If you forgot to fill something out, we're going to contact you and ask you to complete that information for us. So if you're found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent a lottery application number, and that's going to be in the form of a series of numbers. That number is just meant to be an anonymous identifier. We're not going to be calling names during the lottery drawing. So the number doesn't correspond with a ranking of any sort. It's just corresponding with the order in which we approved your application. So if you were the very first person to submit your application and have it approved for this lottery, your number is going to be A.001. On your application, you will have indicated your household type is either household type 1, 2, or 3, or 4. In this case, these are 4-bedroom households. And all household types, no matter if you have 1 person in the household or 8 people in the household, you're able to qualify for these homes, but type 4 households are going to have priority since these are 4-bedroom homes. So type 1, 2, and 3 households are going to be behind all type 4 households on the waiting list that is established after the lottery. And that's really just because the Affordable Housing Program doesn't want to give priority to households who may not need all of the space for these larger homes. So something kind of random here that I wanted to mention, we get questions for these homeownership lotteries as to what the taxes will be for the year, and just want to give you an estimate on that. So the tax rate for Plymouth is $12.69 per $1,000 right now for 2025. So based on the affordable sales price, the estimated taxes for this home right now would be about $4,400. And that changes per year, just depending on if the tax rate changes. Usually it changes a little bit. So again, the lottery application deadline is March 24th. The actual lottery, as you can see on the screen, is going to be held virtually on April 8th at 6 p.m. So it's going to be the same format as this, where it's a Zoom session at 6 p.m. There's a screen share so you can see the lottery happening in real time. And we create the waiting list shortly after the lottery that evening. And top households are invited by SCB Housing to move forward in the process towards reserving one of the homes, securing the mortgage, and purchasing the property. So every lottery number is drawn during our lotteries. It's not just going to be 3 numbers that are drawn because there's 3 homes. Everyone who is approved for this lottery gets a placement on the waiting list. So the lottery is held just for us to to establish an order of priority for these waiting lists. So if you're watching on the night of the lottery, you're not going to know where your placement is on the waiting list, because I then need to sort the result. So for example, you might have a type 1 household that's drawn first in the lottery. That doesn't mean that they're going to have the first position on the waiting list, because they're going to be behind all type 2, 3, and 4 households. But all that is to say, if you're, 4th, 5th, 6th on the waiting list, it doesn't mean that you won't have the opportunity to move forward in the process. If households ahead of you on the waiting list drop off because they either couldn't secure their mortgage pre-approval, maybe they are not mortgage pre-approval, their mortgage commitment, or they just decide that they're no longer interested in the opportunity, we move down the waiting list as anyone drops off. So it's possible that you won't be invited forward right away, but you could be later on in the process. So the waiting list is sent to you right after the lottery. So once the waiting lists are sorted, we'll email everyone the waiting list, next steps, and you'll be able to find your lottery application number on those waiting lists to see where you have placed. And so for those of you who are at the top of the waiting list or are going to be invited forward right away, the top 3 households, or possibly more than 3 households, because we usually screen more applicants than there are homes, you're going to be invited by SCB Housing to submit your income, asset, and tax documentation at that point. So that's when we'd be confirming your eligibility for the affordable housing program. So hopefully by that point, you've been able to gather the information that was spelled out in that documentation requirements guide that I mentioned that was sent to you when you got your lottery application number. So you've had some time to be able to hopefully get all of the paperwork together to move forward in the process quickly. And so once we receive your application package, we're going to review it to make sure that we have everything. Most people do not submit a 100% complete package to us on the first try. There's a couple reasons for that. The first is just that there's a lot of information that we need. And the second is because sometimes even if you submit almost everything to us, we have questions for you on, bank deposits, or we have questions on something that we see on pay stubs, for example. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that you're going to be denied by us. It just means that we might have to send you a checklist to confirm what is what's still pending. And so if you're found eligible by SCB Housing, our next step in the process is to send your file to the State Department, like I mentioned, who oversees the affordable housing program. So in this case, again, it's the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. They're going to do their file review and hopefully give us the green light that you're eligible to move forward in the process. Once EOHLC has approved your application, this process becomes similar to if you were purchasing a market rate home. And so this is kind of the step in the process. If you've been approved by both SCB Housing and the state, if you decide to hire an attorney to help you through the rest of the process, we encourage you to do that. Obviously, this is a large decision for anyone purchasing a home, and you're perfectly welcome to do that. We just suggest that you wait until you're further along in the process to do that. So once EOHLC has approved your application, we're going to put you in touch with the developer so you can schedule a time to tour the home if you haven't already and complete their reservation agreement. So in order to reserve the home with the developer, you have to submit a $500 refundable deposit. And after you reserve the home, you've chosen the home that you would like, you have about 10 business days to sign a purchase and sale agreement with the developer. And that's when you place the first 1.5% of the sales price, which is part of your down payment, minus that $500 that you've already paid to reserve the unit. Your purchase and sale agreement is going to include certain agreed upon contingencies like a closing date, and it's one of the last steps in the home buying process, luckily. So once that P&S is signed, you're going to need to go back to your bank where you got your mortgage pre-approval, and you're going to obtain their mortgage commitment. And their process varies a little bit depending on the banks, but generally they're probably going to ask you for all the documentation that you have up until this point. So your purchase and sale agreement, your deed rider for the affordable housing program. They'll do a appraisal of the home and hopefully issue that mortgage commitment. So after all of that, SEB has to do their final review. So households who are applying for these affordable housing opportunities need to remain eligible for the program, the affordable housing program, up until closing. So about 3 weeks prior to your closing date, we'll conduct a final review. That might include SEB Housing asking for updated pay stubs, bank statements. We'll need to see your mortgage commitment letter. And if everything looks good on our end, we'll forward your file again over to the state, EOHLC, for their final review. So both of us are kind of doing 2 reviews here, depending on the time of the process. And if you have maintained eligibility, meaning you're still qualify based on your income for the affordable housing program, then you can move towards closing. Once you close on the home, you can move in, and there's not going to be any future income or asset eligibility reviews. This is obviously one of the main questions that we're asked about these affordable housing homeownership opportunities. If you purchase the home in May and you move in, and you don't need to answer to anyone going forward in terms of, do you still qualify for the affordable housing program later on in your life if you get another job, get a raise, have someone move in with you that has more income. None of that matters after you have moved in, as long as you qualified at the time of closing. The only thing you have to keep in mind is that deed rider, and like I said, if you're selling the property in the future, the state agency will need to be informed of that and be part of the process. So that about covers everything I wanted to get through, but I know that I want to open it up for any other questions, things I didn't cover. And just a reminder too that you can get the lottery application on our website under Cranberry Cove, and the information packet and the sample deed rider are there as well. Does anyone have any questions on things I didn't cover?
I came in a little late, so I don't know if I think you might have covered it, but I just wanted to ask you the question anyway. I think in the beginning, you usually ask for the full application, what do you call it? The application that we can find on the website, the lottery application.
Just the lottery application, yeah.
So we don't need to submit all of the supporting documents at the time of that application, right? But as long as we submit it before the deadline, we're good to go.
Yep, so you just want to submit the lottery application. You're basically self-reporting your income to get into this lottery, but you need to also submit the mortgage pre-approval with it. So to get that mortgage pre-approval, you're probably going to have to provide some of your income information to the bank.
Okay, got it. So the lottery application and the mortgage pre-approval. Got it.
Yep. Those are the only 2 things that are due by the application deadline of March 24th. And if you're one of the top households on the waiting list after the lottery drawing, that's when you'll be invited to submit all of your pay stubs, bank statements, tax returns.
Got it. Understood. Thank you very much.
Yep, no problem. And that wouldn't be until April, by the way, because the drawing is April 8th. So
yes. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Maria again. I don't know if you mentioned that because I was logged off for a couple of minutes. But I am currently pregnant, and on the application, when it's asking about like let me see, who's gonna be occupying the unit, I just put my unborn child because he will be here soon. So it's okay if I put him or her.
Yes, you should list. Yeah, just list the child, and you can put if you know your due date, you can put that on there. Just so depending on when that is, if we need any more information from you, then we can ask for it before closing. Yep.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry, another question.
Sure.
So when you were talking about the processes after we are selected, if we win the lottery, I don't know if it's the same process as if we were buying a regular home. But is there within the 10 days that we're gonna have to sign everything, can we inspect the house?
So inspection, I believe so. This has come up once before, and now I'm forgetting what typically happens. There's no reason that I can think of that you would be prohibited from doing that. So, you know, just the same thing in terms of if you're hiring an attorney to represent you or anything, you can hire someone to take a look at the property if you'd like. Typically, nobody is hiring a realtor because you don't need a realtor for this purpose, since there's no marketing involved in, you know, from an outside party or anything like that. You're going to be set up with the developer to be able to do a walkthrough on the home. But let me double check on the inspector for you. I don't believe the developer would pay for it, but that is something I'll get back to you on as well. I have your info.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Would you be able to send me that information too? That'd be great.
Sure. If you could put your, just do a direct message to me with your email address, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael.
Great.
Hi, and I have completed the application and I sent the pre-approval letter with it, but I never received the confirmation email.
Okay, did you send that within the last couple of days?
No, it was sent around February 4 or 3.
Okay. Why don't you also, well, what I would suggest for you actually is if you could email info@scbhousing.com. I'm going to put it up now. Just info@scbhousing.com, because I think that you would, you should have already received something from my colleague who is reviewing the applications if you submitted it that long ago. So I would suggest for you to, email us and ask, just give your full name and the, obviously just let us know that it's Cranberry Cove that you're looking to ask about. Did you email it to us or did you mail it?
I believe I mailed it to you.
Okay. So, I mean, it could take a little bit longer, obviously, if it's coming in paper mail, but I would say still check in with us on that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. Anyone else? So once again, applications are due just a little less than a month from now, and it's just a lottery application and the mortgage pre-approval that's required to be submitted at that time. And once that comes into us, we're going to let you know if anything's missing. We'll be in touch with you, and we look forward to getting your application. And I'll be in touch with these the two people here. We're asking about the inspection, and then also Maria, the down payment assistance question.
Thank you.
This is just another direct question here. Do we have to hire an attorney after the lottery is drawn to close with the house or for any other reason during the process? So it's completely optional for you to hire an attorney, but we know that a lot of people do that when purchasing a market rate home. So we're just letting you know that that is something that you can 100% do. It's not something that's prohibited. But yeah, you don't need to. No, it's not a requirement. We just let everybody know that if you are planning on doing that, you're not going to do it early in the process before you know if you've been approved by both SCB Housing and the state.
I don't know. Oh yeah, last question too. You said something about down payment assistance. Is that correct?
So there was someone who Maria was asking about down payment assistance because she already has been approved by Mass Housing for.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So there are programs out there. I just don't have any to refer to you right now, but they definitely exist through Mass Housing and through other nonprofits.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thanks again for the participation and for joining me. And we will be in touch once we receive your applications, and I'll be in touch with about these questions as well. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.